see coming to fruition the work of many, many, many years. Stanford has an illustrious history that dates back into the 1850s, and much of this has been somewhat lost along the way. Fortunately, when Dr. Pizzo arrived 11 years ago, he arrived with a wonderful sense of history, a dedication to Stanford, and he really bought into the vision in trying to maintain our heritage in a very positive way. I spent probably 7 or 8 years of my life involved in this project, and again, it's so gratifying today to see this come to fruition. It's much like, in my way of thinking, one of the old Cecil B. DeMille epic films. If you recall, the trailers used to say it was years in the making and cast of thousands. Well, the years in the making is true. The cast of thousands, perhaps not so true. There were several hundred people involved in terms of staff, faculty, the people who were interviewed, and we're here to celebrate all these individuals today. We'll start with Dr. Pizzo. He really needs no introduction, but I would say that he is a gentleman of great integrity and genuine concern and interest in alumni relations and in the history of this marvelous Stanford Medical School. So, Phil?
Thank you, Ross, and thank you for your tremendous leadership. You were both leading the Alumni Association and since. I think you played such an important role, and everyone here is deeply indebted to you for that. So a couple of just comments about this project, and then more knowledgeable people than I can tell you how it all came together. But I'll tell you how the idea started. So some of you, and I was one of them, spent a lot of my life, in fact I spent all of my life until I came to Stanford on the East Coast. And there's a tremendous difference in philosophy on the East Coast, right, Larry, as compared to here. And when I left my job at Harvard, I actually had to sit for a portrait. Like the other portraits that gather dust, and they become just features of auditorium, and people look at it and I'm not quite sure who the individuals were. And when I came to Stanford, I was pleased to see that there were no portraits. Now, I would say that over in the faculty club where you'll be tonight, there are a few snapshots. If you're a Nobel laureate, you get a 5x7 sitting somewhere in the faculty club. So we need to kind of strike some balance between too much of a homage to the past and what is really the characteristic of Stanford, which is to really think about creating the future and pay no attention to the past, because the big questions shouldn't be rooted in things that have already ground us, but rather reshape us in unique and different ways. So as this project was evolving, and for those who attended my presentation inside, I gave you a little bit of the background, which I won't repeat. I would say that one of the things that I did ask that we do conceptually was think about how to capture some of the past in a more dynamic and suitable way for Stanford. Not just put up portraits, but capture the narratives, capture the work, capture the people and their students and staff and other members of this very diverse and broad community from the beginning, which actually goes back to 1858 when Cooper Medical College was founded, all the way through the present and deeply into the future. So this is an organic process. And Maggie Saunders, who's here, was really championing this from the very beginning, and I think through her and Tom Leader, who is doing the landscape architecture, and really, I think was further captured by this vision of coming up with something that would be suitable for Stanford, engaged Susan Schwarzenberger, who's here as the artist and conceptualizer for the project that you're going to hear more about and that you've seen along the planters. It begins down near the Clark Center with the inception of the medical school, extends all the way through the end of this walkway to the present, which is really a prelude to the future, because as the medical school extends forward in years to come, there'll be an opportunity for telling more of those stories. And I think that this is really a matter of recognizing the past, not as a prelude to the future, but at least a recognition that all of us are built on those who've come before us. Now, I would certainly say that I, as a continuously evolving now senior citizen, look at all the things that we've spent so much time worried about in terms of legacy as really unimportant in reality, because we're all kind of small seeds on a long landscape of evolving and changing times. But there are incredible things that have happened here, and I hope today or in the future when you're back visiting us, you'll have an opportunity to walk along here. Just pause in front of one of the planters, look around, and remember those who got us to this point, some of you who are sitting right here today. So without further ado, I will turn the program over to, is Tom? Tom, come forward, you're next. Getting up?
Thank you, Dean Giesel. I'm here because I was basically present at the birth of the project, and it was a great moment. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I can't remember exactly, but we were sitting around with architects, planning the area and how it would be organized, and there was clearly a need for a big sort of linear pedestrian connection, a thing that would hold the campus together in a very urban way. And so we arrived at the idea of this big walk, at the time called Academic Walk, later changed to Discovery Walk. And so the question came up, what does it mean? It's so big and powerful and a major kind of lifeblood of the campus. The question came up, what does it mean about the school and their heritage and history? And so being designers, things came up like, well, it's really like a wave, it's like a cloud, all these different great metaphors, it's a tsunami. So great, well, what would that actually mean in physical terms? Actually, analogies and metaphors just make me crazy, because they're actually meaningless to anybody that wasn't there thinking that way. So finally, I think I came up with the idea, why don't we just do something really literal? Why do we have to have all these analogies? And over a period of time, it seemed to be like a good idea. Why don't we just let the walk sort of unfurl the history, the heritage of the place as it moves forward in time. And as I was saying that, I was thinking about my friend Susan Schwarzenberg, because I had been to see a few times the Rosie the Riveter Memorial in Richmond, California. And if you haven't been there, you really should go. It evokes the stories of women who were building battleships in World War II, and it does have this very kind of progressive unrolling of history, but with very carefully done images and with quotations from these people, so that it was not like a hall of fame, it was really more like storytelling. And I know Susan has worked a great deal in the field of memory, and particularly taking on people's stories. Not only Rosie the Riveter, but she had a great book about in Seattle, the families of retarded children that were able to become members of the school system through a long series of acts of activism and so forth over a period of years. And she told their story in book form. But right away I knew we have to get Susan involved, because we have to find a way to do that. She's the right person. And of course, selecting artists here is a complicated process, takes many years. Becomes, many issues enter into that decision process. And when it was explained to me, oh God, how will we do that? So we basically we were able to position to let's just hire Susan, and she can work as part of our team, and we'll get her to the point where we can present something to Dean Pizzo. And Maggie said, well, if he'll accept it, there you go. So sure enough, we got an idea together. Started off very dumb idea that we had started with, just about having things, words in the walk, and it gradually kind of became vertical, and that was a transformative moment when a lot of more media, images and very careful resolution became possible. And the fact that we have these groups of images around what are essentially tree benches allows some of the dynamic of the research to really be organized in a way that's true to the research here, and not like a Hall of Fame sort of thing, or a literal history. So things are merging and passing each other through time. And it was a beautiful presentation that she made to the dean, and I was happy to be there and to be a part of it. And he said, "Great, let's," and he became extremely involved. And so it was a great, in the end, very kind of personal collaboration between Dean Pizzo and Susan. And I'd just rather hear you talk about it now.
Thank you all so much for being here today. It seemed like half my life is on the sidewalk over there. Not really my life, but a lot of time and effort to try to pull this thing together. But I want to start first by saying that no project of this scale is ever done by one person. There is quite a number of people here I want to point out and thank before I make a few comments about the project myself. Certainly Dean Pizzo, I want to thank him for championing this project and being accessible to us. He's a brilliant man. I'm sorry to see him leave, even though I'm not at Stanford. I know he'll be leaving soon. And he just did so much for the school that, and I think especially honoring the idea that people's stories are important. Maggie Saunders, technically the project manager, but really much more than that. Whenever you work for an institution that you're not part of, it's like coming into a different culture, and what you need is a translator. You need someone who will introduce you to everybody, explain the strange code language that each institution uses. So Maggie was that translator and colleague, and really I think helped us understand the school, and the school understand what an artist needs when they do a project like this. Ross Bright, of course, introduced me to the alumni and found a missing manuscript about World War II. So I greatly appreciate that contribution to the project. Lane Library was my base in the beginning. Heidi Heilman, Drew Bourne, and Patty French dug through and found many documents for us. The landscape team, of course, Tom, thank you for getting me involved in this, and your entire team for the brilliant design and the details in the granite and stainless steel benches behind me. And then my close team, Gail Laird, will you stand up wherever you are? Gail is a photographer, and it turns out learned to do exactly what I know how to do. She started out as a kind of project assistant, but soon was interviewing and really managing the project on her own. Leah Elliman, where are you? Leah Elliman is a landscape architect and also the project graphic designer. She's designed all these terrific brochures and pieces that you all have, and gave us a design style for the project. Jennifer Kemp, who's not here, was our science editor and principal copy editor. I don't really know all this science, although I tried to learn it, but I found I needed someone to give me lessons on the phone every night as I struggled. And Kurt Kozer. Kurt Kozer is the person that etched all the granite and found the stone for us. And if anyone wants to know the technical information about how that was done, Kurt is your man. So anyway, much of my work has explored the processes of individual life in the context of history, how we are both shaped by and influenced the many stories that comprise really the great novel that history really is. And it's always been an interest of mine in my public work to somehow put these stories in a context that takes them out of a library and a book, but really puts them in the path of public life. What I've noticed since the project opened is, people come here from all over. Students hoping to go to school here, funders that perhaps will, add some money to Stanford. Visitors, patients may wander over from the hospital. And here they can engage for a few moments in something about scientific research and clinical research, and maybe learn something about their own health. In the panels, we have topics that range from how did an experiment get done to ethics around certain scientific and medical issues that we're facing today. Just to give you a little idea about the kind of entire scope of the project, you may have noticed, although there's a lot of vehicles around here, but along the sidewalk here is an entryway that brings you into the LKSC that is really a timeline of the school's evolution, starting with its founding in San Francisco, and then it's really the kind of names of all the buildings that were created to expand the school. And every building is really a program. It's an idea. It's an evolution. It's not really just brick and mortar, but it's the way in which the school advanced. As Dean Pizzo said, the project begins on that end. And the first 5 benches are about the history of the school in San Francisco. The rest of them are really more thematically oriented, but each one sort of begins with the evolution of that particular area of science. And then in front of the benches on the sidewalk is a very simple timeline that tries to contextualize the stories in kind of medical history. And some of the things on the sidewalk are actually Stanford's great contribution to the history of medicine, and others are not. But you get a sense of what the different research and clinical ideas, what they're really addressing in the work that they're doing. So anyway, I think that the next part of this event today is we're going to we're going to lead you on a tour of the project, and I don't exactly know how we're going to do that, but I think we're also having champagne, so that'll help. So different ones of my project team are going to stand at different sections of the benches. So there'll be people down at the historical section. I think Gail and I are going to sort of wander down this way in the more technical section. And please, I see as I look around that there are some important faculty and researchers who have been featured in the project. So I hope you go stand by your section, because you will be the best storyteller, of course. And the last comment I want to make is just that no project like this could ever be complete. We started thinking we would interview about 60 people and create maybe 60 stories. Turns out we interviewed over 200, and there's about 150 different stories of medical science featured. And there's over 1,000 images, and all of the images most of them come from the labs. So I feel in a way it's a kind of a snapshot of medical science today, and I hope in the future when people visit, they'll kind of get a sense of what people were thinking about today in our era, and hopefully add to it in the future. So anyway, join us on the Discovery Walk. Thank you.
This job. It's a little overwhelming, and you will have a chance to tour it today, but you're going to have to come back 6 or 8 or 10 times. I think I've been here a dozen times. You could spend an hour, literally, studying and comprehending and understanding each of the benches. There's one other thing that we should not overlook. We've talked about the Discovery Walk and sort of the history of Stanford in stone coming up from Campus Drive to the entrance to the new building. But over here on the lawn, sadly obscured by the tent that's going up for Monday's event, we have 2 magnificent marble columns which were stolen away from California Pacific Medical Center, the help of Linda Clever. These stood astride the entryway to the original medical school building, which was torn down back in the 70s. Beyond that is a beautiful granite lintel which sat astride the doorway above these columns. This also was salvaged from CPMC. It sits on a bed of bricks that were saved when the medical school building came down. I recall many of you that we sold these bricks to alumni, and we tried to reclaim as many as we could, so that the sense of the history of the school going way back is maintained. And I thank Dean Pizzo profusely for being so generous in allowing this project to be developed in such a magnificent way. It certainly makes me as an alumni, as an alumnus, proud, and I'm sure that all of you are very much proud of your school here. It's a marvelous place, and this just helps to enhance it. So thank you so much for coming. There is champagne, and take your time to stroll and learn all that you can. And please come back again and again, because this really warrants repeated visits over the long haul to really fully comprehend the meaning of it all. So thanks so much. Just one more item, and I see her over there, my good friend Maggie Saunders, who was also already given attribution, but she was just a peach through this whole thing, serving as project manager, troubleshooter, somebody you can cry on her shoulder, and she's really put her heart and soul into this, and certainly deserves all the recognition in the world.